Hello, everyone. This is my banned book, PechaKucha, and I will jump right into it. So, the book that I did my assignment on is The House on Mango Street, and it was released in 1984, and it was written by a woman named Sandra Cisneros. Cisneros is a Mexican American woman, and she often talks about feminism and Mexican American culture in her literature. Just as a quick synopsis of the book, the story follows a preteen girl named Esperanza, whose family comes from Mexico, and they move to this new place called Mango Street. And during the book, a whole slew of events happen that we'll get into later on. Now, the reason why I chose this book is because I've read it before, and I found the themes in it interesting. But I wanted to read it again just to see it through like an education lens and see how I could apply it. This book was banned in Arizona in 2017, and this was done in a greater effort to try to get rid of Mexican American related things in the curriculum. Along with that, it was also banned due to, discussing many different social issues such as feminism, culture, and poverty. The first one I want to talk about is feminism, and one of the biggest parts of feminism in this book is patriarchy. Um, there's many instances in this book where men often have a more powerful role than the women do, and they're often controlling, whether that be a boyfriend to a girlfriend or a father to a daughter. Another big thing in this book is beauty standards. There are often times in the book where the young girls will be very self conscious of their appearance and they'll try to do things to change it, such as with their hair or their clothing or just, generally stuff like that. Another major part of this book is sexual abuse. This is very prevalent in the book, and it's a very common issue in this area that they're in. Often dealing with older men who try to make sexual advances on younger girls, and even to the point where the main character ends up getting sexually assaulted towards the end of the book. I think this can be applied to education since, as sort of, role models for students, it's very important to know that this is the reality that some children go through, especially young girls. So I think it's very important as educators to be mindful of just how some of these different traumatic experiences and, thoughts of oneself might affect education and their safety. Another big part of this book is culture. One big one in this case is religion and spirituality. There are many moments in the book that sort of talk about this, like Esperanza's family is Catholic. There's a Muslim father, and how he views the world plays into how he treats his daughter, which goes into the patriarchy from earlier. And there's a whole, just a sense of spirituality, about the meaning of life and the great beyond and things like that. Heritage is also a very big part of this book. Many people have pride in where they come from. Such as these two girls, they are very prideful when it comes to being from Texas. There's a woman in the book that moves from Puerto Rico and has a pride for her culture and her language. And it's a very prevalent theme throughout the book. Another theme that isn't as discussed in the book, but I think is very important, is segregation. It mentions that there are white people that are sort of fearful of going in that neighborhood, and that's because it's generally an area with many minorities in it. And yeah, I think all this can be applied to education since it's very important as educators to be aware of the background of some students, and being able to know different cultures allows for a lot more of a diverse teaching experience, which may be helpful. And for the segregation thing, as we talked about previously in the class, we know that poorer areas are more likely to receive poorer education, which can continue a cycle of poverty, which is the next topic that is very heavily discussed in the book. There's this cycle of poverty that seems to inflict the area in the book, which is kind of sad because many of them either work very low minimum wage jobs, and they definitely seem to all have aspirations for something bigger, but they never really had the chance or opportunity to. There's also a lot of consciousness when it comes to social class. There are many times in the book where Esperanza feels inadequate due to something like her shoes not being as nice as other people's, and her house definitely carries a lot of weight because it's not a nice house, and she's very self conscious of how that looks to other people. Another big part of this is neglect. Since many of these parents in the story are too busy trying to keep, a roof over their heads, they often tend to be neglectful towards their own children. For example, there's one family that all the kids just run amok, and I believe one dies actually just due to the carelessness of, the mother who really can't deal with all of the children that she has. And I think this is a very important thing when it comes to education, not only just for like the idea of poverty affecting education and how that might lead to a poorer experience when it comes to education, but also just reminds us of the goals of education and that it can be useful to sort of get kids like that out of the situation that they're in and allows them to sort of rise above their situation. Um, why does all this matter, really? Well, I think all of this really matters because this is stuff that should be talked about. Because when it's talked about, it creates a dialogue that allows for situations like this to be solved.